Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Commander Clash podcast, where the Commander Clash crew discusses Commander-related topics, and today we are going to be talking about the top mistakes to avoid in Commander. Our group has been playing casual Commander for over 6 years now, pretty regularly, once a week about on average. And we've learned a lot of things during that time together. Some of us have been playing even longer. I know, Krim, I think you started before 6 years ago. I started like a decade ago. So, yeah, we've been playing a lot. We've been playing a lot of Commander, and we've learned a lot of stuff along the way. So here's just like some general tidbits nuggets of truth that have worked for us, that we have stumbled upon on our journey together. And joining me on this journey is Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive. How's it going, Seth?
I'm doing great, Tomer. How are you today?
I'm doing well. And then we also have Krim, aka the Asian Avenger. How's it going, Krim?
It goes great. I'm enjoying the miserable heat in California, so just love that.
I see you've dressed down for the occasion. You're not in a leather jacket, but you're wearing the Gengar swag.
It's because if I wear any more layers than this, I'm going to start stewing in my room. So I think we're avidly trying to avoid that.
Very fair. And then finally, we have Richard, a.k.a. the Codfather. How's it going, Richard?
Hey, Tomer. Doing well. I'm also in California, but not stewing, so I don't know what Krim was talking about. He's in California.
Is it called air conditioning, I believe?
No, we have none of that here, please. We
sweat what? It out. You don't?
It's not mandatory.
Yeah.
It's not and also SoCal is hotter.
Yeah.
How do you not have air conditioning?
One is a desert, one
LA?
has lush redwood forests. So you decide.
Well,
by the way, for those listening, LA does not have the lush wood forest.
Wait, is it normal not to have AC in California? Is that like a thing people...
It's not mandatory. It's not mandatory.
In LA, I think it's mandatory.
What's the excuse, though? Like, if you were in Europe, you'd be like, oh, these are all ancient buildings. We cannot put in AC. But it's like, what, your 50-year-old building does not have AC or whatever?
The technology's not there yet.
Technology's not there.
It only gets
the drinking water technology is not there either.
Here. So financially, it's typically not worth it. But Los Angeles, I feel you can get the AC and make it worth it.
I have AC. It's still hot.
Wow. All right. Well, moving on from AC, let's talk about top mistakes we should avoid in Commander. Seth, kick it off. What's one mistake you think a lot of people make and they should be avoiding, especially in casual Commander?
So I don't even think people make this mistake. I know people make this mistake because I look at a lot of viewers submitted Commander decks.
Right, first off,
and I also play with Krim. He's in our play group. But really, it's not playing enough lands. This is by far the biggest mistake I see new players make. I even see established players make. And it makes sense. Lands are pretty dull. And when you're building a Commander deck, you want to stick in as many cool things as possible. You know, the big bombs and the sweepers and all that kind of stuff. And there's the temptation to just trim back on lands. But then you never get to cast your big cool things because you get mana screwed and you have 2 lands while everyone else is doing all their big things. So play more lands. I see people a lot of times play 35, maybe 36. In a world of channel lands in MDFCs, I really don't see an excuse to be below 38. And I think ideally you're going to be 40 plus lands, honestly, when you count all the lands that can do extra things on top of just the boring lands. So I think I even play too few lands, and I keep working on it and trying to add more and more because I really think it's a more the merrier type situation when it comes to lands.
Now, I'm going to just slightly put my 2 cents here. I know that I often get mana screwed, but that's more like I'll admit when I started out, I fell in that exact pitfall, right? Where I just 35 lands. So that's what I need. Doesn't matter what deck it is, whatever the curve is, 35 lands. But I'm not counting mana rocks, and I hope people aren't counting mana rocks towards your land count because that does not count.
That's
but
how it works.
I used to think like that. They're like, oh well, it's fine. I have 10 mana rocks. I can play 35 lands. That's just not the same. So, however, I am at 39 lands now, usually with MDFCs, and still get mana screwed. So that probably means I need to go up even more.
Yeah. I also want to just make a quick caveat or just indicator that I said emphasis on casual again, but I know there's going to be some comments being like, well, in my competitive deck, like I run 28 lands, and like we're focusing on casual. Competitive is its own meta as well. So yeah. Just
these
throwing it out there.
And these are general guidelines. I played this mono white 1-drop with Isumara deck at one point, and I think I had like 31 lands, and I think it was correct because like it was all 1 or 2 drops, and there wasn't any reason to have a bunch of lands on the battlefield. But in general, as a default, I think you should aim for 38, and then ideally sneak in another 1 or 2 on top of that, counting your MDFCs and channels, and get close to 40.
Boring. But I agree. So I think the default is like 37 has been a long time default.
Yeah.
I think that number needs to go up. I think lands are so powerful nowadays. Like MDFCs, channel lands, just normal lands like Urza Saga, not normal lands, but regular lands you play as lands. Urza Saga, like Field of the Dead, Maze of It, Vesuva, like all this garbage is so strong, right? Like you want to hit them.
All this garbage is so strong.
Yeah.
way to sell
and
it.
here's the thing. So people talk about how green is like the strongest color in Magic because you can ramp, right? If you miss a land drop in the course of the game, you are like reverse ramping yourself. Like if you like manage to ramp in growth and then you miss a land drop, you've accomplished nothing, right? So you need to hit a land every single turn of the game until the game ends. Right, even a turn 11, right? Because that means you can now cast your like 20 costing mana, commander, and then play a spell and do whatever, right? So you need to hit land drops throughout the entirety of the game. And if you are running, like especially if you're running something like 35, 10 or fetch lands, deck thinning is a meme until it's not, right? You run out of fetchable lands. Now your fetch lands are actually not lands anymore, right? So like you can actually run out of lands or quite easily. Or, the meme of Seth playing the landfall ramp commander without any basics. What was it?
I had like 3 or 4 to go with my Sword of Animus.
Because you can run out of them, right? You land tax once or twice and you have no lands in your deck, right? So you actually need a lot of lands. And I don't know why people don't play lands, but should play more lands.
And there's just so many cool utility lands today. It's not as painful as it was 10 years ago. Like 10 years ago, I can see why it felt bad to play lands. But when your lands are creatures and removal spells and card draw, like it's not painful at all to have a ton of lands in your deck because those lands are going to do something other than just tap for mana in a lot of cases.
Triome Cycle. They're free, right? You can even play like the monocolor cycle lands if you really want, right? Like if you're really that desperate. But so here's another thing. Don't cycle away your lands. I've seen this so many times where people faithless looting, chuck 2 lands to get more gas, and then like are mana screwed at 4 mana the rest of the game, right? Like don't, just because you have lots of mana in your hand doesn't mean you gotta like chuck it all away, because if you start missing land drops, that's also a problem. So yeah, that also in game value your lands as well.
Yeah, I mean, Triomes, I almost never cycle because paying 3 to cycle is a lot. But for the most part, I and for like channel lands and stuff, it's like you want to run Boseiju and Otawara and all that stuff like anyway, and you want to be using them for their channel ability over the land ability. So you might as well just put them as that +1 land, instead of cutting a land for it. But yeah, I totally agree. Like the most efficient ramp you can ever do is just playing a land, because 0 mana puts you up a land, and if you're not doing that every single turn of the game, you're falling behind. So it's pretty easy to calculate. Like if you think your games last like an average of 12 turns or something, you can use like a calculator to see how likely you are to hit it. And in fact, I'll link a Frank Carson article talking about how much lands you should be running for how many turns you want to be hitting lands. And that's very informative. Like you could actually just math it out to see. And obviously, if your games are ending like turn 5 or something in CEDH, then you want less. My general philosophy has always been just having 50 lands in my deck. So I will have like 37, like whatever the split is, lands and ramp. I'll do like 37 and 13, like 37 lands, 13 ramp is usually my default. But like it depends on the deck itself. But like, yeah, generally speaking, like that's like the biggest complaint for viewer submitted, because we do like viewer submitted decks like, twice a year, 3 times a year, once or twice every single season of Commander Clash, and we're on season 12 right now. The most consistent thing that I have to skip over submissions is like they'll have like a really cool concept that I really want to try out, but they have like 34 lands, and their average mana curve is like 4. It's like, this is going to be a problem. And yeah, you have to think about how many times you're mulliganing, because the first mull is free, so yeah, you can get a little bit greedier, but if you're consistently mulling to like 6 or even 5 because you just can't, you keep having hands without lands in them, that's like an indicator. Like you should go up more. Like, I don't know. People don't, yeah.
I don't know, dude.
There's a lot of disadvantages.
I mulligan a lot.
And then we have to restart the game. Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's a resource that if you're not using, you're just missing out. You have to mulligan.
Yeah. So I think we all agree upon this. This is probably like the most important takeaway tip is you should be running the appropriate amount of lands, and you can literally math it out. So something you can easily improve in any deck, really. All right, we'll move on to one that might have more controversy. I don't know, Richard. Tell us what your tip is.
All right, I see this in the Commander Clash comments and in preview season, especially when I see new cards, where I think most players fall in the trap of over-indexing on politics rather than technical play. And I think if you're familiar with 1v1 Magic, it's the same as, when you first start playing, you're all in on the bluffing. You're all in on bluffing and hidden information and all this nonsense, where 99% of your game is carried by correct technical play, right? And I think for Commander, like, technical play involves executing your combo correctly. I mean, that part is obvious. Like, don't punt away your own victory, right? But the real technical play that people need to work on is like threat assessment, not overcommitting to the board, predicting what your opponents can do. So when I see a card where people say like Secret Rendezvous is political and I'm bad at politics, I think that is 100% wrong, right? Because if you Skullwinder someone or you Secret Rendezvous, you should be able to predict what they're going to do, right? Like if you look at the board state, you look at the decks, you look at their graveyard, and I Skullwinder you, I should be fairly certain to know like what you're about to do with the Skullwinder, right? And it's same with 1v1, right? Like if you know how to bait people for 2-for-1s, if you play this creature, they'll remove it. And, you don't have to have perfect information. You don't need a thought seize them to predict their play. And I think a lot of players just miss out on that on Magic. Like you don't need a literal goad on a card, right? You can predict where the attacks are going and what's going to happen, like, based on the board state. So yeah, I think people just put far too much into politics because it's like fancy, right? It's like it's like bluffing in poker, right? It's like utterly useless unless you're at the very highest levels of the game, right? Like, so don't focus on politics. Just focus on playing correctly, good board assessment. Like you can just play on mute, and you should be able to do like fairly well.
I would say I think you can do really well in Commander with tight technical play and no politics, but if you have it the other way around, you're not going to get anywhere. If you have politics, but you can't do the basic technical stuff, you're not going to win at all. So I would say that I think Richard's probably correct that as much as I love politics, and I consider it to be like a big part of the fun of the format, and maybe that's something to consider as well, is like it's enjoyable to try to get people or try to work out deals. So maybe that's where politics come in. But from wins and losses, I don't think that politics is usually as impactful as most people think.
I strongly disagree there in some regards. Like I think you don't need to politic every little time. Like you're like, hey, don't kill me, don't kill this, or and I won't blow up your thing. Well, like you wouldn't kill it if it's not the biggest threat. So there's like a lot of wasted time there. But I strongly disagree on not trying to politic and like form alliances or try to at least deflect a bit, because I think Richard is like the best at deflection at the table, and he uses it very often, but he uses it very subtly. Like he will point out other people's threats and he will downplay his own, or he just won't bring attention to his own. And that's the deflection, right? You kind of like make the focus somebody else, right? And I feel like if I don't say anything when he says when he deflects towards me, I think I lose like every single game. So like I feel kind of obligated to like defend myself.
I hard disagree with this so much because I play in the random rooms all the time where I say literally nothing. Like there's no talk, and the games play out literally the same. Right? So where it gets interesting is that you can manipulate people with politics, right? But you first need to understand like what they're going to do and what they want to do, and then you can manipulate them by saying something, outside of that, right? But it's hard to manipulate someone if you don't know what they're going to do to begin with, right? Because you don't know what's going on, right? So I do think technical play trumps politics like a lot, right? And I know we politic a lot for fun, and it is fun, like Seth said, but I don't think it's like that important. And I think like a lot of cards, like people politic for no reason, right? Like as a substitute for correct play, right? Like, don't attack me and I won't attack you, right? You can predict if they're going to attack you before doing anything usually, right? Like, you have some at least like 80-90% chance of like getting it correct, right? And the worst part about these deals is like if you make the deal with the wrong person, you lose, right? Like if you make the deal with the combo player and they just combo off, like because your threat assessment was wrong, your politics was also wrong, and then you lost, right? So I don't know. I feel it's just that noob trap of like poker bluffing where everyone's like, yes, I'm the perfect bluffer, right? I'll put the shades on and everything. And I'm like, dude, you don't even know how to play poker, right? like learn how the rules work first, right? Like, yeah.
I don't know. I feel like politics has a lot to do with, like, it depends, I guess, the play style you have. Like someone like me who has usually a mark or a target on them, I have to politic, right? I actually, I feel
Mr.
like
I go for a second.
I mean, but I like regardless of where I end up, there are people that will naturally just play cards and things like that will draw aggro. So you have to kind of politic a little bit. I like lightly, like, hey, this isn't gonna affect you, like, so like don't worry about that, right? Or I can do something to help you. Like if you play Xander, like there's definitely politicking involved, right? So I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's like correct play and tight play is usually pretty like, is going to reward you. But I think there is still an element of politicking that needs to be done in Commander.
Yeah. I don't know. I agree. The technical play is like the emphasis, but sometimes I feel like politics is necessary.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll just get murdered.
Because
I mean, there's certainly times
it's always correct to kill the person, right? Like if we were talking, like I feel like most times it is correct to just get a player out of the game, right? Yeah. That's less people to fight against. And if they're not able to help you in that moment, then they probably won't help you later, anyways, right? So you may as well just remove them now.
If you're asking the combo player,
Jedi politics in the mind, where I look at Seth, and I'm like, Seth, we got over. Seth
I know.
Back at me and taps his creatures, and we don't say a word, but we both know what needs to be done. Like that's the next level of politics, right? And that is based on reading board state, right? Like the Jedi mind battle, like
really, we
that's
just
essentially what it is, right?
Or we just don't have to actually talk about it because we just always know to kill Tomer first and take him out as quickly as possible.
And then Tomer looks back and he's like, "Don't kill me, guys! Like I already know what the conversation's gonna be, right? We don't need to have the conversation. Right? We know it, right?"
What about Richard can't keep getting away with this?
Exactly. That's exactly what Tomer will say. And then Seth will think about it and be like, no, it's okay. He won't get away with it.
And then he gets away with it. And then he gets away with it.
But it's just wasted breath at this point. We know how it's going to play out.
And I don't think Richard is saying,
dance, all right?
And I don't think Richard is saying no politics, right? You're just saying that, like, don't focus on politics at the expense of technical play. Like, if you got to choose one, focus on the technical play. If I had to choose
between being the smoothest talker in the world or being like the tightest Magic player in the world, I would take tightest Magic player, right? I would be, I would choose that, right? And then obviously, you can play whatever your style is and you can mix them in, right? But
that makes sense to me. All right, moving on. Krim, what do you got for us as a tip?
Okay, so it's kind of like a two-parter, really. It's like always have a lot more removal, but then also don't just use it all willy-nilly, just sending it at the first thing that comes down. Like, I think that I see this quite often, actually, where people just kill the first problem that gets on the board. When what I like, as someone who just sits there and waits forever, the way you survive this is you let everybody commit their problematic stuff, and then I sweep the board. I don't just sweep the board. Unless you are going to win on the spot here right now with this one creature, almost every time I will wait until everybody presents their biggest threat. And because like you gotta, if you play Control all the time, you gotta get your 50 for ones, especially in Commander. So I don't know. I just see that oftentimes people will send the easiest removal, like the using removal immediately, and or not waiting to let everyone else at the table respond. Like I will not respond unless I absolutely have to. And I know that I've become the person that like that everybody looks at like, do you have that answer? I'm like. And this did cost me that one episode against Seth where I was like, no, I know Richard has a removal spell, so I'm going to let Richard do it. And then Seth just wins by ulting because no one did anything. And I sat there with a foot, like, I was like, I could have stopped this, but I don't want to. I know Richard always has it. So
Yeah.
I think that's correct. That's the correct play.
Yeah. What, letting Seth win the game even though you have an answer?
So when
I
you
don't know about that.
So when you fire off your removal, you need to ask yourself: are you more likely to win or less likely to win? Right? And if you are just sitting there answering the board for everyone else, you're just gonna lose.
Yeah.
Right? So like sometimes you make the decision and it's wrong and you die, right? But I think that thought process is correct, right? You look at the problematic threat, you're like, are we gonna die? And is someone else gonna remove it? And that doesn't mean you fire off the removal, right? And then sometimes you lose, but that's the normal, like 75% of the time you lose, right? So that's the normal thing, right? So it's no different if Seth won versus, Krim fired off the removal and then Richard won or Tomer won. It's effectively the same result for Krim, right? Like he needs to fire off the removal and then he win the game, right? So that's what he needs to think about when he's firing off his removal, right?
If he doesn't fire off the removal, then he has a 0% chance of winning. If he does fire off the removal, he has a higher than 0% chance of winning, which means it increases his chances of winning if he fires
it's not
off the
zero
removal.
Because there was another turn, me, who thought I had the removal, right?
Yeah, like
I don't remember the exact instance.
I try to play my games to where I make you use the resources before I do, right? And then I only because oftentimes people will just want to hold it on to so they could do something with it later, and I'm not trying to benefit everyone here unless it's absolutely a must, right? So I think it's totally correct to sit there, weigh out the okay, is this a threat that's going to win the game now? And also factoring in hey, this Droneth Magistrate, I may not want it here, but also, I can tell you don't want it here, and you probably care more about your commander than I do, so I'll let you answer it. So I'll just sit there and I'll just form my own hand and keep myself safe for as long as I can.
I have a situation for you guys. Let's say you're mono black reanimator. You have a feed the swarm in your hand, okay, or in your deck, in your hand. Someone slaps down a heuristic study, right? Do you remove it, or do you hold the feed the swarm for the rest in peace that you're waiting for? Because that's the only answer to rest in peace. And if that rest in peace comes down, your deck is done for, right? What are you supposed to do in that situation?
Oh, it's
mill him out.
Oh god,
I hit the heuristic study. I don't even think about it.
I wait.
I probably don't.
And I pay the one.
I don't care about heuristic study, so whatever.
Yeah, that's the problem. Seth doesn't care about heuristic study. The guy draws a billion cards, and then you're like, oh, well, at least I have my feed the swarm for the rest in peace. The guy drops down rest in peace, and you try to feed the swarm that, and he counters it because he has 50 cards in his hand. So of course he's going to counter it. What? Of course, you're supposed to get rid of the heuristic study. What are you doing?
If he draws that many
what are you doing?
It's perfect.
I think there's actually a really interesting conversation about doing what's best for the table and doing what's best to increase your odds of winning. I feel like that's where we have a lot of disagreements sometimes when we're philosophizing about Commander, because I think you should be trying to increase your own win percentage, technically, right? I think I can be too altruistic or whatever, but I would argue that in a situation like that, if your goal is to win the game, you probably win more by ignoring the heuristic study and trying to execute your combo in winning the game rather than dealing with the heuristic study to help out the entire table to keep someone from drawing cards.
Am I living in bizarre world? How many times have we had just the heuristic study player just draw many cards and then lose? That doesn't happen. They win. 9 times out of 10,
someone
they win.
becomes archenemy and dies, right? And if you spent resources to make them not archenemy, you're helping them. You know what I mean? If Phil plays a Soul Ring and you instantly shatter it, you saved him, right? Because otherwise everyone would have ganged up and killed him, right? So
Yeah,
like,
but
saving
there's
you
certain
from
degrees of
yourself.
how far ahead he can be, right? And
well,
Ristic
Krim,
said
what's
he drawn like
so
20
Tomer
cards.
would remove it. Seth wouldn't. I wouldn't. Krim, would you remove it?
I would not. I would because if I'm a reanimator deck, I'm worried about way more important things: rips, graph diggers, cages, things like that are going to actually shut down my game plan. Like this is still a 3v1. So I'm still going to let I still think the table should force the control deck, the person that just drew a ton of cards, to answer everything. Now it's just just keep jamming until they run out of answers, and then you start attacking them, right? Something has to get through.
But if we go through how many times the Ristic Study player is fed and how many times they actually win, I guarantee you it's going to be so much higher than 25%, which is what you would predict it to be. But what you've
done is you
games.
sacrificed your game to stop the Ristic Study player from
I've sacrificed
winning.
one card to prevent
here-
myself from just auto losing from the Ristic Study, who
But
just
you
gets
auto
fed
lose
all
to
day.
a rip.
But okay, wouldn't the math be though? Everyone has 25%. This play happens. Ristic Study comes down. The Ristic Study player's percentage goes up to whatever 40%. But then by you holding on to your ability to win the game, wouldn't your odds of winning also increase, and the other two players would decrease? Isn't your odds of winning the game going up by not doing that? Even though one player is going to benefit. One non-new player is going to benefit a lot.
No,
from it.
because you're
only
playing
if the Ristic Study is dealt with, right? If the Ristic Study player wins, it doesn't
hypothetical.
count, right? Yeah.
You're playing for a hypothetical. I have a single answer to a single lesson piece. I have to hold it for the rest of the game on the off chance that somebody actually will play this lesson piece, and my deck literally has no outs to it. Which this
It's
is
a situation. You're
such
mono
a stretch.
You're
Or
mono
you just
black.
remove the Ristic Study. No, if you're a reanimator deck, you could just hard cast your big creatures, right? You don't.
Tomer,
If you get shut down by a
is true.
lesson piece, then you've built a bad deck.
What?
You should
Tomer,
build something better.
Tomer. This is exactly it, though, right? If I know you hate it that much, or someone else at the table is going to hate it that much, I let them deal with it.
This is perfect.
Okay.
Right? You play, and if the three of us play with Tomer, that's perfect, because Tomer will happily remove it, and we will happily not remove it.
Yeah,
And you'll happily lose to it.
It's
I
okay,
just
but
know.
Tomer will remove it.
right.
Okay, and when I don't have the answer, and you guys sit on your answer,
But we're
and then
okay
you
with
just
that.
guide
We're
the
okay with
Ristic
that
Study
situation.
player.
We're all okay with no one removing it, so that is already okay with us. But then it's a bonus if someone goes out of the way to remove it, right? So it's a win-win for us.
No, but you're talking about technical plays. You will just throw the game because you
I
hope
think
that
the
I'll
right technical
have the
play
removal
is to
spells.
not remove it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's not
You're all
politics,
crazy.
right? But you
You're
can
all
argue
crazy.
with that's not correct, right? But I think that's the correct technical play.
How many times?
right?
How many times do
let-
you have to lose to Ristic Study before you decide it's worth spending a removal on?
I'm curious though. Let's replace Ristic Study with Mirari's Wake or Smothering
It's
Tide,
worth
some
it,
other really
yeah.
busted enchantment. Because I think Tomer gets in a blind rage whenever Ristic Study comes up. So it makes sense to me that Tomer's going to want to deal with the
Smothering Tide,
Ristic
is that
Study.
worthy of removal?
Yeah,
But,
I'd remove
take the
it,
next
especially if
best-
they have a full grip of cards. If they have 7 cards in hand and they drop down a Smothering Tide, the entire table, the best interest to increase their win percentage is removing the Smothering Tide. Same thing if you drop a Mirari's Wake. Are you crazy? They're going to untap and win. What?
Oh, we're
How
so
is this-
noble. Helping
How
the
is this
table.
no, it's not noble. It's like proper play.
You know what's funny?
If I have infinite mana, the only thing that's stopping me from winning the game is having a full grip of cards to spend that mana on, because ramp by itself is meaningless. You need to have something to spend the mana on. So if the person already has the cards, they need the mana, they're going to outvalue you in a single turn if you don't deal with it. And even
I don't even see Mirari's Wake and Ristic Study as the same thing. I will make it a thing to make sure the Mirari's Wake doesn't happen, but the Ristic Study you can have that.
Maybe this is just all our personal biases.
Yeah.
Well,
The cards that we dislike.
in a
Speaking of wasting
magical
removal.
world, where everybody pays a 1 for Ristic Study, then yeah, I wouldn't be that blind range. But if I'm sitting with Seth, and Seth is just let them draw,
But
then yes.
so Tomer's taking the stance that there's no such thing as wasting removal, right? Any really high tier threat, you should snap it off, right?
No, it's whatever increases your win percent. I totally agree with you guys. Where if there's a big threat on the table, I'm not just going to blind throw my removal at it because they become the arch enemy. They will take the threat off me. Somebody else might be pressed to deal with them, or we just deal with them collectively. However, I also know, because I played a lot of Ristic Study games, that the Ristic Study player just still wins in the arch enemy role because they have Force of Will, because they have Fierce Guardianship, because they have so much interaction that is free that breaks the action economy, that they're still going to beat you, even if you say, hey, the Ristic Study player is arch enemy. We even played, remember the no ban list commander that we did, and then Krim just dropped a Ristic Study and none of us could deal with it, and he drew like a billion cards and he was arch enemy, and we all teamed up against him. We were all like, we have to beat Krim, and Krim just beat us all. Remember that? Do you not remember the Ristic Study games? Like,
it was Hall Breacher. And then I plus one party Jace.
I would just say, like, four-player games are different than 1v1 games, though. Like, in a 1v1 game, if your opponent's win percentage goes up, yours goes down. In a four-player game, an opponent's win percentage going up doesn't necessarily mean your win percentage is going down, because you have two other players, so it's not necessarily reducing your personal chances of winning the game because someone else is.
So
I was talking about personal chances.
When someone pops off, I think my win percentage goes up. Right? Because it's like easy politics, it's easy arch enemy, it's easy for me to do what I need to do now without getting the flack. And I think a lot of times the way you win in our play group is you let Phil Soul Ring into Fellow Stone, and then you yourself Soul Ring. You're behind Phil. Phil is leading the charge. Everyone focuses on Phil, and when he's dead, you're left king. Right? Like that's the best way to win, right?
Or sometimes he just beats us all, like he shrooms us to death, you know?
Sure,
when he has a
but
fast
that's
or he Jin Cataxias us to death.
Exceedingly rare. But okay, we know Tomer's threshold. Krim, what is your threshold for wasting removal? What is considered a waste of removal then?
So for me, like, a waste of removal is legitimately if I can use this to, like, either I'm only using this as an emergency red button. Like, if somebody is about to pop off and win the game, then I will use it.
Yeah.
Or I mean, like, there's a little bit of BM here and there. Like, sometimes you gotta just turn one's swords to plowshares.
I mean, unless somebody's playing green. If somebody plays green, then you'll just
well, no, because green, there's no wasted removal. No, but like, even against green decks, I will just sit there and wait, right? Because I know that it's green. That's not the end of their turn. They have a lot more to do, right? So I think, like, unless it actively hurts my game plan, like, I could save this for, like, an Immortal Sun in my Super Friends deck, or if I know you've got some kind of haster or, like, a Kalia is about to come down, I probably need to be ready for that, right? So I do not do something unless I think it's going to absolutely, like, lose me the game by letting it, like, happen. Otherwise, you can't, like, sit there, I just get punched in the face, I'm okay with that, whatever, right? Like, I will use my life as a resource for quite some time.
I think I can be pretty wasteful with my removal sometimes. Just firing it off because I can at a good threat. That's probably something I could actually improve on to some extent. But I think ideally, like, you want... I mean, the best removal spell is the one that's left in your hand at the end of the game, right? The one that you didn't have to use, like, in a perfect world. So I think ideally, you're only using it on stuff that is directly impacting you. I think where I make mistakes is hitting stuff that is kind of negative for the whole table, and I know everyone's going to be happy to see it removed, but maybe it's not. Like the Durantith Magistrate Kim brought up earlier, like, it's annoying, everyone dislikes it, and be like, all right, whatever, I got a removal spell, just kill it for the sake of everyone, when really I think that's probably not correct as far as, like, maximizing my chances of winning, really.
Right, like, if you know your deck doesn't care about a Durantith Magistrate, like, sure, you're kind of, like, it's like a little bit BME, it's like sitting there like, haha, I'm a 1/3, right? And that's it, that's all it is at the end of the day. But if you don't care about your commander hitting the board that much, your deck still has numerous ways to win, then I'm going to let that benefit me. Because, let's just say Tomer's got, Niv Mizzet, and Richard's got, I don't know, Rograk or something like that. Who that these people are trying to build their decks around that. Like, I'm going to let you sit there with that Durantith Magistrate. It doesn't do anything to me.
I think I convinced myself, going back to Richard's last point, that I'm going to get some political favor out of it in the long run. Like, I'll do this for the good of everyone, and it'll pay off, like, later in the game. And usually it doesn't. No one remembers, no one cares. Yeah.
Or something. Yeah. No one cares anymore, right? They're like, thank you for propelling me.
I mean, yeah, but then sometimes the viewers get upset. Like, remember, Phil didn't wipe a board when I had, like, Elf Ball or something, and everybody got mad at him. But, like, You can use that philosophy at the same way.
That was correct, though, right? Oh, we should have a whole podcast on that, right? Like, I could see his line, and it's a lot more debatable than what the viewers were stating.
Yeah, he would have lost more than half his mana base.
Yeah, but his other side was one more land, and he would draw 10 off of it, right? So
yeah.
But
agreed.
You know how
that was his own thing.
I feel about wasting removal. I think most casts are waste, therefore I don't even put removal in my deck. Right?
I
agree with Krim, right? Like, you only use it when you're about to die. I feel it's like a 3-for-1. So it's like ripping off like a Path to Exile or like an Evoked Solitude in Modern. Like, you don't do it on turn 1 willy-nilly, right? You do it when you absolutely need to and you're about to die. You know, like, you can't just go down like 3 cards for fun, right? So I don't think there are many situations that want removal, so I just play less. But then because I play less, you need to be very particular about your removal, right? Like, if you remove the wrong thing, you're just going to die, right?
And that's why it's important to run more removal.
I'm on that camp.
But now you're just like policing the board for everyone, right? Like, what was the point of that, right? Like,
no, but like, okay, you say that, like, I totally agree with Richard, and like, I think I was more wasteful removal until like the past couple of years. But like, even Seth's actually really good at holding removal sometimes. Like, I will look at some commander clashes just to see what people had in their hands at a given time. And like, Krim will like really sit on like a singular counter magic for an entire game and then use it at the opportune moment when he really needs to. And Richard does the same thing. Seth also, like, I have seen games where he does it too, and like, these are good like learning moments for me. But at the same time, you need to have that removal if it will save you your game. And if you're running none of it, then guess what? You'll never have that removal ready. So, like, I don't know, especially with how easy it is to make generic card advantage these days. Like, it's easier in any color now to draw a full grip of cards at any given time. You got to make sure that you have, like, the answer. One of those cards is going to be the answer that saves your bacon.
That's why you put 2 pieces of removal in your deck.
But then you won't see it, and you just lose the game.
Piece of removal.
That's so
I
little.
know responsible for gaming.
You just tip over. Like, I want to have a removal spell in my hand.
No wonder Richard can't waste removal. If he's only playing a single piece, you gotta be like
the
super
comment section
careful
moves
with it.
on him like every
I
single
don't play
game.
instant speed creature removal.
I sure as heck do. That's all. That's why this is the thought process that led to us just handing Seth a win. Now, Richard, you got it. Use it.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying, like if Seth is like, hey, my commander is Mirrorwim, and I know for a fact that if Mirrorwim gets a tap, I lose the game. Guess what? I need to have a removal spell for Mirrorwim. Like, oh, you're like, oh yeah, well, I'm so glad that it will be like somebody else's. Tomer will deal with all the issues, but the thing is, like, if I don't deal with the issues and you guys aren't, then Mirrorwim's gonna untap and win the game. Like, how many times do you have to see that play out?
You have a plan to live through the Mirrorwim, right? Like,
well, you're gonna hold your Dawn Charm and fog one attack from the dragons,
right? That might be better than just firing off removal and then delaying it by 1 turn, and like not getting anywhere. Right?
Mirrorwim's a 6-drop, like.
If you remove it, you just need 2 more mana to recast and do the same thing again, right?
That's a full turn off the person. That's like the exact. That's better than the Dawn Charm, where you
Dawn
just
Charm is a full turn as well, a fog.
No, they got to cast. They got to spend all their mana doing whatever the heck they want that turn. Instead, they spend their whole mana recasting Mirrorwim for a single time.
We need to play a game of Commander together, like controlling the same person. It'll be so interesting because we disagree on how the game should be played out.
I agree with you to so many extents. Like, I learn from you guys a lot, but like, I still run removal. I still think like it's better to not lose the game.
Just don't waste it.
Exactly.
Just don't waste it.
I agree.
Hence our point.
Don't waste it, but also know that there's lots of threats that need to go. So
yeah.
And I also agree with your point about popping off to an extent as well. Like, CDH taught me this a lot. I have a Niv Mizzet CDH combo deck. And the idea is you get Niv Mizzet on the battlefield, and then you put a curiosity piece on him. So you do arbitrarily high number of card draw, arbitrary high number of ping. And when I used to play CDH Niv Mizzet, I used to try to force that as quickly as possible. So I get Niv Mizzet out, and then I try to get the curiosity combo out as quickly as possible. It would almost never work out. I would get shut down, and then the next person would immediately win. So what I would do now is I would just put down Niv Mizzet, and I would pass. And I would just let other people pop up. I would have curiosity in my hand. I wouldn't cast it until other people would pop off, shut those people down, then I'd go for the win. And I think like that's a good mentality to have, as long as you know that you can survive the other people popping off. If you can't survive the other people popping off, you gotta shut them down.
Just gotta go
nip
for
that
it
in the,
or
nip
shut
that
them
in
down.
the bud. So I don't know. This was definitely an interesting one to debate, and I think the comment section will have some good insight. So let us know in the comment section below how you deal with this wasting removal topic, and would you remove Ristic Study ASAP, or would you just lose to Ristic Study? The choice is yours.
Just use more politics. The politic your way out of Ristic.
Yeah. Whoever responds to that, oh, you kill it every time. That's exactly it. I'll just let you do it.
All right. We're going to move on, and I'm going to have one tip. And this tip is not having a backup plan. A lot of decks will be like, all right, I have this one combo that I want to pull off. The deck is built around this one combo. But what happens when the combo gets shut down? Do you have any other ways of winning the game? And I think this is super important because, like, you're playing against 3 people. They're going to ideally have interaction and try to stop you from winning the game. They might exile a piece that you have. Maybe they're running mill or something. Maybe they gaunt to you. And your main win condition is not always going to pan out. Actually, statistically, it's not going to pan out. So you're going to have a reason, a way of still winning the game. Most combat decks are going to have many ways of winning the game. They just want to hit you with any creature. Any creature will do. You know, if you're a stompy deck like Xenagos or something like that, you just smash with anything. But even in those cases, what if, like, I remember I had like a Xenagos against a green fog deck. It was very similar to Richard's style of, I forget the name of it, but basically it would run the buyback fog ability or Spore Frog, and you would not be able to deal combat damage. So do you have a backup plan for the main way that your win condition gets shut down? And the way that I did it is I would run like stuff like Warstorm Surge, Terror of the Peaks, where whenever a creature enters the battlefield, I can deal direct damage to a person's face. And that got around the whole fog issue, and that gave me an avenue to win games that I otherwise was not able to win with my primary win condition. And you can do the same thing with combos. You can have a backup combo or a backup way of winning the game, but I think every single deck needs to have some way of still securing a victory instead of being like, well, I lost this one card, or my opponent has the perfect response to me. I guess I literally don't have a way to win.
I definitely agree with that. And I think it's like, it doesn't have to be some big, huge thing. A lot of times it can be 1 or 2 cards is all you really need. You mentioned like your Warstorm Surges. You can have backup combos. If you're playing a creature deck or a beatdown deck, it's not that hard to have 2 cards that synergize with each other and like, oh, I accidentally have this way that I can win when everything goes bad. So I think that's definitely really important, and it's something that's easy to miss. We've seen like some Commander Clash games where someone's trying to do something and a card gets exiled or milled, and all of a sudden it's like, oh no, like I can't do what my deck was designed to do. And then you really need to have a way that you can still be in that game and still have a chance to win, even once whatever you're trying to execute gets shut down. So yeah, I think that's definitely very good advice.
I would also advise to not have your backup plan overshadow your primary plan. So let's say you're playing like Phonax Mill or something, and you're afraid someone's going to imprison in the moon your Phonax, so your deck will be like totally useless, right? And then you're like, well, I'll just play Thoracle, you know, so that I can win through that, right? Like, no, right? Like, then you just became a Thoracle deck, and then it's not cool anymore, right? Your backup should probably be like, I don't know, Tasha's Hideous Laughter combo or something, you know what I mean? Like some other on-theme way of doing
cacophony.
it. Yeah. Because otherwise, like, you know, if a red deck, you can just go to helm anyone, right? But like if you did that, did you do what you wanted to do? You may have gotten the W, but maybe you cheated yourself out of a victory, right? Like, so if your backup is too good, it's the primary. And also it makes very awkward playing. Like, should I keep working towards my 8-card janky combo or just my 2-card insanely efficient combo that I have in hand, right? Now what do you do, right? So yeah, make sure you don't go too crazy with that, and it's still on flavor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. I've seen so many decks where they just get overshadowed by their backup combo because like, oh, you know what? Then it's like you just became a Thoracle deck.
Yeah. It's like, oh, it's a janky deck, but I just wanted this backup to win. But like, my backup to win is like.
So I came up with this sweet janky idea, but also I'm gonna win with infinite mana, and then I'm gonna torment you, right? Like,
it's a Boros equipment deck, and it's just supposed to win by attacking. But I have Godo, and I have Helm of the Host. So
I mean, it's equipment.
Oops.
I was guilty of that, by the way. I had a Boros equipment deck, and I had both pieces, and I'm like, oh, I guess this is kind of lame. I took that out.
Knowing you, Tomer,
yeah.
you probably also had a Kiki combo in there somehow.
No,
Yeah,
I had an accidental combo that I had to very tearfully take away. I had Sword of Hearth and Home, and Aurelia, the war leader. Aurelia says whenever it attacks for the first time each combat or each turn, you can take an extra turn. So you can blink it. And so I had both on board, and I attacked somebody, and they're like, wait, do you win the game? I'm like, no, I don't. Obviously, I don't win the game. It's like, no, you can blink this Aurelia, because I was attacking with two creatures. One was equipped with the thing, and one was Aurelia. And then I was like, oh, I guess I win. But I didn't want to win that way. It was lame. So I took out
I don't know. That's pretty
Aurelia.
cool. That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, but it felt like I wanted to win with Cauldra. So I was like, shame.
Is that possible?
I haven't done it yet, but I'll let you know.
Calder's okay.
Someday.
Okay. Someday.
Hey, I won on Commander Clash, all right? It's done. It's over.
It's the season I wasn't there, Tomer.
Exactly. And I think most importantly is having backup plans if you're playing against Krim, because I can't tell you how many times Krim has exiled a piece face down, so I literally have no outs to finding it.
There's no backup to that, right? You can't
there's
undo
not.
a face down exile, right?
It's only face up cards. You can only get face up cards from exile. There's literally zero ways of getting it when exile face down.
In between
Trust me,
all
I've tried.
my milling and exiling random things, it's pretty fun, actually. I get so many win conditions compiled up.
All right. Moving on. Seth, what do you got for us for tip number 2?
this is another big one, and it's making yourself look scarier than you are for no reason. And this actually includes a lot of different things. I think in the early days of Commander Clash, I was famous for being like, hey, can I win this? Or can I win next turn? And just kind of like telegraphing, which is like obviously going to make everyone try to kill you in the next turn cycle, or because they know that there's some chance that you're going to win the game. But this also just includes how you play the games as well. Like, we've had some conversations about, should you run out Soul Ring on turn 1 if you don't have a follow-up? Or another huge one is people running out combo pieces without having the combo. Like, you see a lot of times someone runs out an Ashnod's Altar, or even just like playing an Ashnod's Altar but not comboing with it, where you're like, oh, I'm playing this fairly, it's a sack outlet, it'll be fine, I'm not like trying to do anything degenerate. No one's gonna believe that, and rightly so. So you're gonna draw all this heat for no reason. So I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I made when I first started playing Commander, and that people still make. Like, be aware of how your opponents are going to perceive your cards, your deck, and I think it goes right down to the commander you reveal. Like, I've also learned that if you play a commander that everyone thinks of as busted, and you try to field it in a nice way, it's probably not going to work, because everyone's still going to think, oh, they're going to do something degenerate with the Ur-Dragon or with Edgar or whatever. Like, you're not going to, no one's going to believe you have a nice, kind version that they're going to enjoy playing against, so you're going to be the arch enemy. And if you draw that heat and you are playing a janky version of Edgar or the Ur-Dragon, you're probably going to get beaten down like you were playing a strong version. So you got to back it up. So I think those are just things to think through. Like, be aware of how other people are perceiving your deck, and try to avoid making yourself look scarier than you really are, because you end up paying the price for it.
Or back it up.
Or back it up.
Yeah.
But then you really are scary. Like, if you really are scary, then that's fine.
Combo, right?
Embrace it.
I think you own it, right? Like, you own it. You can squeeze your own stuff in there, but yeah.
I totally agree. This is like a common thing that I see, especially like in random play groups. And then it's easy to get like upset too when you're not running something very scary, but you drop down something scary, and then somebody, like, people are scared of it, they remove it, but you're like, well, I don't have the combo yet, blah 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 blah, and it's like it feels bad at that point. And it's like, you got to know how stuff is getting perceived.
And Richard's great at this too, with like his finishers and his creature decks. Like, you don't just run out your True Conviction and then try to build your board, or run out your Coat of Arms and try to build your board. You wait and you get your board set up, and then you drop and then you win the game. So I think Richard's like the master of this in our play group, at least.
Well,
and I think Prim's like the master of backing it up, because he will be like, come at me, bro.
Yeah, like, I think this is why you don't play like half stacks, right? Everyone's like, oh, stacks, better kill. Like, you got to stack them out to not die, right? So you got to kind of commit. But you can accidentally look scary. I do this all the time, where like I draw a lot of cards, and they're like, wow, Richard just drew 50 cards. And I'm like, sure did. I can't do anything because I'm a Kithkin deck and I need like 5 combats to kill you, but I look insanely scary
cards.
because I have unlimited mana and cards, right? But,
I want to draw 50 cards though, Richard. You're rubbing in my face now.
So there are cards like maybe land tax can inadvertently look scary. Like, oh my goodness, Tomer has 7 cards in hand, but there's 6 planes, right?
Yeah.
Like, there are ways
I usually have to like remind the table, like, you saw me draw 6 of those cards. They're all planes.
Or like building up like a big board when you don't have the overrun in hand. Like, you're just inviting a board wipe for no reason. Like, don't commit to resources unless you're actually going to untap and win, because that's what everyone thinks you're about to do.
Yeah. Either don't look scary, or if you're looking scary, just commit to it and
back it up, right? Like
back it up.
Just back it up.
Back it up.
Cool. The fairies pro. See you later, right?
Fair enough. All right, moving on. Richard, what's your second tip for the group?
This is a good fallacy here. Just because it's bad for you doesn't mean it's good for your opponent. Now, in 1v1, this is true, right? There's 2 players. If something is bad for your opponent, it's good for you and vice versa. In Commander, there are 4 players, right? So just because someone does something to you and it's bad for you doesn't mean it's good for them. And the best example of this was when Krim swords my turn 1 Jeweled Lotus Commander, right? And everyone's like, Richard doesn't believe in removal. Right? And I'm like, yes, I got my face wrecked in, right? But did Krim actually increase the odds of him winning the game? Right? That's the question you really need to be asking if you're trying to evaluate removal, not how hard I got wrecked, right? And the answer probably is like, you probably shouldn't have, but like,
I don't know about that.
I agree with
that's content.
100%.
That's content, right? But like, let's say I play a bounce land and you have a strip mine. If you strip mine me, you are most likely incorrect unless you have like some way to recur or do something weird, right? Like, you just went down versus 2. No. So it's horrendous for the person with the bounce land, but for the person with the strip mine, they just went down 2 lands, against the other 2 opponents, right? So it's like really bad for them. So they shouldn't be doing it.
You can't compare a strip mine to a source spot unless you have like you're already on like land number 10 or something, and then you strip mine.
Yeah.
That's comparable. But like a turn 1, like Seth's Commandeer strip mine, for example, he spent his first land drop to remove my land. Like, that is an enormous commitment. I mean, it was hilarious.
In my defense, I also
commitment.
had a mana crypt at that point, so what did I need lands for?
I would say after commandeering the mana crypt, probably the strip mine is a huge investment. But like, Krim just spending 1 Swords of Plowshares to basically take out an opponent for like the entirety of the game, I think is very much worth it.
I mean, that's fine, but that's a debate you should be having, right? Did Krim increase or decrease his chance of winning the game by spending a mana, spending removal, etc.? Not like, Richard, you were erased from the game immediately by removal, hence you should play more removal, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Well,
right?
If you got a counter magic in hand, I don't know.
Exactly. You could be debating, should you be playing Fierce Guardianship? Maybe you should be playing like Blossoming Defense or something, right? But you're evaluating from the wrong lens, right? You should be evaluating from Krim's POV and whether it's worth it or not, right? And of course, there's other value. There's technical play and also for the memes. Right? Maybe it's technically wrong.
We're also talking
but for the
about
memes, it's hilarious, right?
It was a great moment.
That's what I was going to say. From Krim's POV,
every time.
From Grim's point of view, it's definitely correct because he just can do whatever trolls the most, and that's like definitely the most trolly thing you can do.
That's it. I could take Swords of Plowshares, and then Grim was just like, "Wish granted."
And I got the swords.
You actually taunted me and goaded me into it. So I was like,
Krim was actually the wish master.
That was just next level politics, but my technical play wasn't correct.
I think Richard does have a good point, though. Like, going back to the bounce land thing, that's a really good example of that. Like, you do have 4 players. Each of them are trying to win the game. And just hurting one opponent, if it hurts yourself, too, isn't necessarily... Sure, maybe it hurts the opponent more, but you're also, like, decreasing your chances of winning the game. And I don't think a lot of people think that way when it comes to Commander. I think especially if you're coming from 1v1, where you're used to, like, the zero-sum game of, like, if it's bad for you, it's good for me. I think that's an adjustment when you start playing Commander.
I think where like a more common like way you're gonna see that situation come up for you is like if you have a board and then your opponents have like one of your opponents has a better board and you have a sweeper, but you are gonna sweep your own board, right? So like, is it worth doing this? Yes, you will severely dunk the opponent, but you will also sweep your own board. So
Yeah.
that's just like one of those things you have to weigh out, right? Like, and that's there's so many variants that go into that. Like, you know, like you have to look at your hand. What do you have in your hand? Can you redeploy? Do you have a way to like get your whole board back? Like a Patriarch's bidding or something like that, or maybe not Patriarch's bidding because that just gives everything your opponent brought back. But yeah, like so. Like, yeah, like Haunting Voyage or whatever, right? Like, there's lots of things that factor into, like, whether or not you should sweep, but I think it's still important to have, again, those sweepers in your aggro deck so you can be put in those situations. Because... Yeah.
So here's a good example, which I know Tomer goes through this a lot, right? There's a counter spell, because he goes after Krim, and there's open mana, right? And you're like, if I play my commander... and Krim counters it, my game is ruined, right? Like, I am totally dunked on, and, like, this is no good for me, right? But you need to think about Krim. Like, would Krim want to counter your commander? And for Krim, you got to think about the troll factor, too, right? He might just do it
Krim
to
is
troll
like,
you.
I assume Krim will.
But also, technically, is this what he wants to be doing? And you can conclude
Yes.
that, no, Krim would not technically do this. I am safe to run my commander, even though I know he has a counter spell in hand. Right? Even though it would totally wreck your face if he countered you, right? But
I
it
feel
would
like
not
Krim would go
help him
out of
win
his
the
way
game.
to troll me, though. That's where I'm at. So
It would really have to be a good troll, like a really good troll. But otherwise, I mean, like, why would I want to mana drain your 2-mana commander when I know that, like, Richard has his
right?
6, right? Or 4 or something like that.
Yeah.
I get worried around Krim in particular. If it was any other person, I'd be like, all right,
some of it
this
is
makes
self-induced, all right? Hey, like you're
okay.
you purposely played in the opposition agent, so like, it's like yeah, of course.
I've respected opposition agent for so
You
many
respect
episodes.
it so much now, Krim. You haven't seen him this season.
Yeah.
He respects it so much.
What do you mean?
It's funny because now
Krim's
Krim's not even there, so I haven't seen an opposition agent in like I don't even know 2 months.
The mana tithe effect, you do it one time. You just get it. You get it one time. That's all.
You're in my head now. Okay, I think one particular important example of this though is stacks pieces, like Drannith Magistrate and stuff. Like there are a lot of cards. You see this mostly in CDH, and I know there's a lot of raging debate there too. But like if somebody's running a stacks piece that negatively affects you, but it negatively affects all the opponents too, you have to think about how much does this actually negatively affect me? How much is that going to lower my win percentage? Because like if somebody puts a Drannith Magistrate down on the table and it's like locking me out from playing my commander, I look at the other commanders that are being locked out and I'm seeing their board states and how many cards they have in hand. And I'm like, if this Drannith Magistrate was gone, would that be better or worse for me? You know? And like if somebody's playing like, I don't know, Joyra or something that I know is a very scary commander, scarier than whatever I could do, I'm actually really happy to see the Drannith Magistrate there. It sucks because I don't get to do my thing, but it's actually holding back even scarier things. And I'd much rather let those people deal with the Magistrate, and then I can have my removal for the scary things, you know? So, like, stacks pieces always...
Like not blowing up the Ristic Study. Yeah.
Oh, no, because I always lose the Ristic Study. Ah! I agree with you guys to an extent, but then you throw out like, oh, I never blow up Ristic Study. I'm like, what are you doing? Then you just lose.
What Tomer describes happens so frequently that I stopped playing stacks in CDH. I always like lay down all the stacks pieces, and then a player will remove all the stacks pieces and then just pass the turn, and then the next player wins. I'm like, if you removed all the pieces and won, I'm like, good job, sir, right? But all you did was just remove it because it annoyed you, and then let the next person win. Like, what game plan was this, right? So, and this happened like an insanely large number of times, right? Like they would just like Blood Moon, remove it. Null Rod, remove it, right? Like without thinking of like it's actually suppressing your opponents more than yourself. So you should actually just let it sit, right? And wait. You know, have a plan to win the game when you remove it and not just pass the turn and let the next person win. Like that's super awkward, right? So yeah.
I think it's probably worse than casual too because there's like a taboo against playing those type of cards. So like people would be like, how dare you even bring this to the table? And now like you're being like aggroed out, even though like these cards might actually be helping that person. So it's definitely something to like, you should always be calculating like, okay, this card is negatively affecting me, but is it actually helping me out? You need to always evaluate the board state. So thing to think about. All right, we'll move on. Krim, what's your second tip for us?
Despite all the things that we've also just said, right? Like, play this,
100%.
play that, right? Do this. But one thing that I've also noticed that people are very afraid to cut efficient cards for pet cards, meme cards, whatever they want to play. Which I'm not gonna lie to you. I think you should play what you want to play. Like, play if this card like means a lot to you, still play. Like, if you wanted to play Doomblade in 2022 because you're like, yo, this Ob Nixilis Doomblade art is fire, then do that. Like, yeah, clearly Price of Fame or like Deadly Rollick is just the better spell, but you're like, this Doomblade art is my favorite, it's tattooed on my face, then okay, get it, go play it, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that is something that I notice too often. It's like, you'll be like, why do you play this when this just strictly is better? Well, Shadow Mage Infiltrator sucks. Yes, I get that. But check this out. I like this card. Whoa. Like this. Like the thing here is we're talking about casual. So in casual, I think this is where this is fine. Like, play what you want to play. Play the art. Like, if it's like, oh, well, you know, I just don't. Like, I like this counterspell better because it's got cooler art. I like this creature better. It's clearly the most suboptimal version of this card. Whatever, right? Like, play the card that you want to play because at the end of the day, Commander is that, right? Play what you want to play.
Yeah, it's like such
even
a
in competitive.
This
This is not just for casual. In competitive, play what you want to play, right?
I guess
I
also
played
true,
Niv Mizzet.
right?
It's not very competitive.
People play 60 card formats, playing their stupid pet cards all the time in Legacy, Vintage, Standard, Modern. Like, Commander's no different, right? Like, yes, you want to win, but the actual number one goal is to have fun, right? And if you have more fun playing jank cards, then you just work super hard at winning with those jank cards. But like, don't cut them out and become, you know, Sultai good stuff just because they're better cards, right? Like, play the cards you want to play, right? Otherwise, what's the point?
Do you guys think this is the EDH Recification of Commander? Like, I think EDH Rec's a great tool, but do you think it's that Commander, when it started, you didn't have any tools or any data, and now it's really easy to like click on a commander and see what everyone else is playing in the commander? Do you think that makes people makes it easier for people to just like feel the pressure to have to play the cards everyone else is playing and less likely to play their pet cards because they feel like they're doing it wrong or something?
I actually think this is working in favor of the people that want to play their pet cards, because now you have the perfect information. You've played it. You'll try it. You'll understand what this kit, like, example, I'm playing this, I don't know, random deck, right? I've now learned that this tutor effect can be replaced by a worse tutor because it's a tutor that I know, like, I know what spots are flex spots, which cards are replaceable, because now I've played the best versions of them, right? So I actually think having the information and all of that out there is actually pretty good for you. And it allows you to like figure out where you can power down, what cards are, like, you know, as I had mentioned, flexible in a deck.
Nah, I think it's harder to play pet cards these days, just because I don't think it's EDH Rec. In general, it's like also like wizards are printing more powerful cards as well, and
the power gap.
If you open it up, then you're gonna want to play it. But like, I think it's a power level issue. I think like Commander, the average play group a decade ago was lower power than it is now, so you might feel a little bit more pressured to cut your less efficient pest cards over time. Like my random 6-drop that I love for the art, you know, is just not getting there anymore. I need to have a faster start, you know. I need to have a better curve, so I'm going to start cutting out the pet cards and putting in, you know, the more efficient things. But yeah, I don't think it's like EDH Rec or anything. It's just the power level has gone up.
I mean, I agree with Tomer. I think EDH Rec leads to power creep, right? Like, it's much easier to build the efficient, correct version of your commander, and then overall cards have just gotten super strong and like super synergistic, and so it's like a combination of both. But I don't know, like, that's just, That's not a game issue, right? That's like a player-based issue, right? Everyone decided to power creep, right? Like everyone can just decide to roll precons if they felt like it, right? Like there's some line at CDH where you're like, I'm casual now, right? But you could have drawn a line earlier, right? And be like, this format is about playing 5 mana draw 2s or something, right? And this is what we're gonna do, right? But I don't know.
I think it's also
precons
like
are pretty strong too, like much stronger than they were long ago, I would say.
Precons are exceptionally strong nowadays, and I think people give them a bad rap, kind of like white is bad. Like precons used to be bad, but like they're no longer bad, and they're very strong nowadays.
I do think it has something to do with the card pool too, though. Just like the stronger cards, I've noticed this even in Modern. Like since we got Modern Horizons 2 and all the really strong cards there, it's harder to take a card from 10 years ago and actually compete with it with an against odds deck. And I feel like the same thing is happening in Commander. Like if the staples are like way up here, your random old janky thing from 20 years ago is going to be worse in comparison. Like the power level, the differential is bigger than it used to be. So I think if everyone is defaulting to playing the staples, it does make your janky decks less competitive and your pet cards less competitive, but that's not a reason not play them, because when it comes down to it, like you should be doing what gives you the most fun. Like that's the whole reason we play Commander. And if that's winning with your janky stuff, that's how I have the most fun. Like I feel much more accomplished when I win doing my janky weird thing than if I just throw in all the best cards and win with it. So I think you got to keep in mind like what your goals are and what actually gives you joy from playing Magic, and play that way.
I mean, yeah, like that's probably the best way to go about it, right? And it just does happen to be that some of my pet cards from its life are like Notion Thief, which was like terrible to play for a while in Standard.
Oh my God.
I jammed that all the time. I was like, haha, Cavern of Souls, human. No one was ready.
Standard with Sphinx's Rev?
When Sphinx, when Rev came up, but like when I was hitting people's, like Gristle, like I played against a Reanimator deck in Standard, and they tried to Gristle Rev, I'm like, haha, I will draw 7.
Got him. You're not naming Giant with Return 1, Cavern of Souls
no.
Beta.
I did Cavern of Souls everything, though. That card was in my control deck out of the sideboard.
I mean, I always respect people who play pet cards to this day, because I know like you could have ran something more powerful, but like if we're at also like a casual table, like we're not CDH or whatever. Or even if you're at CDH, I don't know. Like
you guys, if you play real CDH, people play pet cards all the time.
Yeah.
It's not like all sweaty people playing like the 1-tier list, right? It's like if you go to a legacy tournament, not everyone is playing the tier 1 deck. People are playing all kinds of like weird stuff, right? It's just skewed higher power level, and they understand that they're interacting with Thoracle. They're not going to be like, unfair, right? But people play all kinds of like weird nonsense in CDH.
And if you're playing lower power stuff, it doesn't fully balance out, but it kind of does a little bit, because threat assessment, right? Like if you're not running Smothering Tithe, you're running something that is like a ramp spell that is kind of cute but less efficient, then people will not be as scared of that ability, right? So in that regard, because it is multiplayer and not 1 versus 1. If Crim's jamming a Shadow Mage Infiltrator, and I know that Shadow Mage Infiltrator could have been like a Dothy Voidwalker instead, like, or I don't remember the name of it. The one, the
they're in the
Horizon
same deck.
one.
They're in the same deck.
Infiltrator's pretty good though.
But
it's
like
a Toski on a creature.
You draw 1 card though. You only draw 1 card.
3 mana, dude.
So like, I won't be scared of Shadow Mage Infiltrator, and it will go under the radar, like, so that kind of balances out a little bit. Whereas like if somebody plays a Shadow Mage Infiltrator and somebody else plays Toski, I'll be like, Toski player's gotta go. So
yeah, no, Commander is like self-regulating like that a little bit at least.
So it's more welcoming for pet cards, I think, in multiplayer.
At the end of the day, if you just think of it like this, the easiest way to put it is that Commander casually can just be like, everyone is the anime character, the anime villain. You haven't even seen him in my final form. I'm only using 25% of my power. It's like, okay, that's usually how I see it, right? Because everyone can play and start at 100%, but they probably play somewhere like 25 to 50% of like the power level they want to be.
Yeah.
Or they could be.
We're just hanging out. You know, we're not going super try hard and casual. And even at CDH, like I run my Nim Mizzet deck. Is it the best CDH deck? No, but I don't know. It's cute. I like it. It's fine. All right. I will end things off with the last tip of the podcast, and that's not being able to protect from attacks. This is something that I learned the hard way in Commander Clash especially, and this is kind of like I picked up from Richard, but also from people like Tom and Jen from previous Commander Clashes. People who have creatures on the board are usually the ones who aren't being attacked, and usually the ones who can set up a win later on in the game. Because just the threat of a crackback is enough for you to kind of be left alone for a bit, even if you have a board. Even if you're scary with creatures, the thing is that people don't want to be hit by those creatures. So they're going to be more likely to not poke the bear, you know? And that works. That's a huge advantage. And I've been noticing this recently. Like 2 nights ago, I was playing with some buddies, and one person is like the aggro player, and one person's like basically Richard. Plays Richard decks, aggro decks, will win with usually combat damage, but will have a backup plan as well. And then one of them is more like, I would say more like a Seth style Dirtle, or like Seth before Seth discovered aggressive strategies, I think.
Before Seth saw the combat
Seth from a couple seasons ago, right? Like season 6 Seth, you know? Panamarkan best card. And he will just not have a board state. And so, like, we have a lot of creatures that say, like, when it deals combat damage, you draw a card or something. And he's the one who's open. So guess what? We're going to be hitting him. And all he wants to do is he wants to dirtle. He wants to combo off. He plays, like, a combo piece first, and he'll have, like, a flash enabler second. And he has a lot of counter magic in his hand. But he has nothing on the board. No creatures. He's just wide open at all times. So he just gets dunked on. And I feel bad about it. But, like, what are you supposed to do? You're the only one without creatures, and you're not playing any creatures. So you get attacked. And like in a meta, especially where everybody has like combat triggers that they want to get value out of, like you gotta have a board state, or you have to some way of preventing opponents from tagging. Like if you're not going for creatures, fine, go for Pillow Fort, or go for like stacks effects, or go for board wipes. I mean, the latter ones are probably going to get you more targeted than not. But like just even if you're doing like some combo strategy, some control strategy, have a way to have a board state that you're not just going to be just the blood bag of the table. I think that's super important.
Yeah, I've been in that position before. Not as much recently, but I certainly know what it's like to be the blood bag. And one thing I've learned about Commander players over the years is it doesn't take that much of an incentive to get people to change their behavior. So I think if you aren't going to try to load up your board with creatures early, things like Ghostly Prison are so effective. Like, it might not seem like that much, but it really does change where people are attacking, or even some of the curses, like the curse that makes the gold token. Something like that's 1 mana, and it's going to get people to attack not you. It's going to change their behavior. So I think cards like that go way up in value. If you do want to do the dirtily plan, you definitely got to be prepared for it, because you will get attacked just by default, because people want to trigger their stuff, and we keep getting more and more powerful combat damage, attack triggers. And it just happened recently, I think on the last episode of Commander Clash, where I was a little mana screwed and Richard had Fable the Mirror Breaker, and I was like, I don't really want to attack you, but I got to get my treasure token, and you're the one that didn't do anything, so I got to hit you. And that was the correct thing to do. So definitely something you got to be prepared for these days, for sure.
All believers in Spirited Companion, Solemn Simulacrum, Wall of Omens, Wall of Blossoms. Yeah, put down a nice early blocker, cycle yourself, not be wide open, have some defense, have some planeswalker killing capabilities.
Is not a blocker, but I'm glad you think so. I'm glad.
Like my favorite Dirtle deck now is a Shurikai deck, and it happens to run Shurikai makes tokens, and I have a bunch of like whenever you cast an artifact, you make a token, and I have a bunch of like mana dorks, and they're all just fantastic blockers, so I don't really get hit much. You know, I have just a bunch of 1/1 pilots I'll throw under the bus. I have a Shurika that is an 8/8 when I need it to be. I have a bunch of just like random tokens, and that's all it takes. Like, boom, I have defenses, but I'm just drilling. I'm not attacking. I'm just drawing cards, discarding cards, and living the Dirtle dream. But I have stuff on the board. And I think like most decks can actually pull that off.
The most
It's
important
something
part
to
is
be
you have
mindful
a
of.
board, right? And the best form of interaction is player removal, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when your politicking fails, when you didn't draw the right removal or whatever, you can just turn your creature sideways and remove the problematic person and then call it a day, right? So like creatures has a lot of benefit. And like the reason why Richard gets away with it all the time is you guys don't play any creatures. And you're like, let's kill Richard. I'm like, cool, come at me, bro, with your 0 creatures, right? I have a ton of blockers. Like, all right, cool. Like, what are you gonna do about it? Nothing, right? You don't have creatures, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, like if you don't want to play creatures, the cycling creatures are a good way to get a board presence without going down cards, right? Like if you don't actually want to be attacking, you don't want to waste cards on creatures, like a Solemn is perfect. Ramps, blocks, draws a card, right? And that draw a card is very important because people won't attack into your chump blocker because they don't want to give you a card or whatever, put you ahead, right? Even though like that Solemn is dying anyway, you're drawing a card, like you probably should still attack right through it, but they won't do it, right? So
Solemn overrated though, Richard. Didn't you hear?
Solemn is the
bad.
greatest mind flex in the world. You put one down, it's like you're invincible. No one will attack you ever again.
Speaking of not attacking you, in a pinch, just leaving up mana can be beneficial there too. I don't think that should be your game plan, but I'm always surprised how much like leaving up a couple mana gets people to be like, huh, like there's got to be something going on. Like, well, what's going on with that mana? I better attack someone else. So
Just play Settle the Wreckage in every deck, and then you'll give everyone that ever attacks you trust issues, so they'll never
I
attack.
think you need to play, if you play in a regular play group, I think you need to mix in these
Yeah.
cards. If not play
Yeah.
them. If you don't think they're good regularly, just like mixing it in so that people
Etherize and Settle.
I think
Make him
if
think
you show
about
me
it.
an Etherize a single time, I'm going to, and you play the same deck again, I'm going to think twice about attacking you, even if you have no creatures. Like,
yeah.
You
I
gotta
think about it,
if
right?
you're gonna play Dirtle
Gotta
and
respect it.
not have anything on the board,
Yeah.
you gotta like have those cards or like No Mercy or something like that.
Yeah.
Spreading Plague. These are cards that'll keep the board clear.
Yeah. Like my Tashiro deck has Hellish Rebuke in it, and I've had people get just killed. They killed themselves attacking me with it. And it's like the weakest card in my deck because it's super situational, but I did it one time, and people think twice about attacking me with Tashiro. Maybe I just have a 2/2 Bushido, and that's it on the battlefield. Like you could totally just keep attacking me and I'll die, but I could have a Hellish Rebuke in hand. Who knows?
All right, I have a question for you guys that's somewhat related but not. What do you think about Fog as a way to protect yourself from attacks? Fog is a very maligned card where people are like, "Oh, you don't play Fog; it doesn't do anything."
Tomer
I
got
am
blown
just
out.
on the Fog
The
plan in
Fog?
2022. I am playing more and more just like straight Fogs, not even like buyback Fogs, but just like a Fog. Like, what do you
Tomer got
guys think?
blown out in Richmond by a fog. One
By
that
darkness.
by darkness. We was at our same pod, and Tomer's like, "All right,
Yeah.
well, I'm gonna have to do away with you." And Tomer sung out, and he got darkness. I was like, "Oh, dude, no one plays around darkness."
What are you gonna do?
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
no.
We have Fog in 3 colors, right? So it's
It's kind of a meme.
you can play Fog.
I think certain fogs are good. Like Ink Shield, I really want to get some
No,
big
no, no,
Ink
no,
Shield.
none of this Fog that's like so brokenly overtuned. I mean, like a straight Fog. Like,
Just like literal.
I
like a
just run
straight
Swords of
literal.
Flashes
All it does is
instead.
fog you.
I just run targeted removal instead, instant speed removal instead.
What? You'd play targeted removal over fog?
So
yeah,
what's-
because it's flexible and it does similar things.
So what's the upside of Fog then? Efficiency compared to playing a Wrath or something? It's just like less mana to leave up.
Yeah, they're
So if
usually
you go
just like
with
1
Crimson
mana
Theory-
instant tricks and stuff like that.
You
right?
don't want a Wrath because like these creatures are not bothering you unless they come in for a lethal, right? They could be doing other things. So you just need this fog to stay alive. And I don't like targeted removal because usually that's not enough to keep you alive. Like usually when you're getting attacked, it's for like mega lethal with an overrun or like some buffing anthem or something, right? So like it's a little dicey. Even if you remove the buffing anthem, there's still like 5 creatures coming in. So I've been playing with the idea of fog, and it's kind of been working for me.
As long as you don't
Actually,
replace your targeted removal with them, I think it's fine. But if you're like, I'm not gonna run Sword Splashes, I'm gonna run Dawn Charm,
Or a
I'll be
board
like,
wipe.
buddy, you have some problems
Dark
there.
Charm's good. I mean, I think
this is what I do, and no one's managed to kill me yet.
Oh, okay, sure.
But
Because
no
the
one's
problem with Dawn Charm is
aggressive.
nobody. If somebody has like, oh, I dropped my insane value engine, it's like, oh well, my fog will not do anything there. Or like, oh, I'm comboing off of my creatures, and it's like, oh, my fog.
But you say that, but there are many things that will kill you. Like they drop a Cradle Hoof, and like, what the heck is your Swords to Plowshares going to do here, right? Like,
right.
There's pros and cons of both cards.
I think one's more likely to save you than the other.
Fog,
in more
right?
situations.
I've come to the conclusion that Fog is more likely. That's why I'm bringing this discussion up, right? I think Fog is more likely to save you than spot removal, right?
I can see it.
Yeah, no.
I think I'd prefer to have like fogs with upside though, if possible.
Well,
like I'd rather have the Dawn Charms or like a little bit more mana.
The green free Fog that no one plays ever. Right?
Ink Shield's too much. Ink Shield's just too much mana to leave up. Like, I want to get someone with it because I think it'd be funny, but 5 mana is just...
Well, it's a win con.
I mean, if it goes well, yeah. So I can see argument for those.
They have so many...
But that's more of a win con than a fog,
really
right? That's an accidental fog.
Whatever.
Yeah, you might be right. And plus, like, the problem with fogs is their card disadvantage. Like, you're going down a card and you're... I mean, I guess you're keeping yourself in the game, potentially, but you're not putting your opponents down a card. But there's so much card advantage. Like, you're never empty-handed these days.
Right?
So if you have all this incidental card draw...
You're going to take out your target removal for fogs?
So this is what removal has two purposes, right? To proactively do your game plan. So remove the rest in peace or the Drannith Magistrate stopping you, and for keeping you alive. I feel target removal is very bad at keeping you alive. So I play basically anything above it, right? A Maze of It, a Propaganda, a literal like phase out Teferi's Protection, or a Fog. And Fog, I think, has some merit, which I don't know if it's correct or not, right? I'm still not convinced.
I can't imagine it being.
No, Teferi's Protection has so many cards nowadays,
and like removal is just not as effective as it used to be, right?
I can't tread this path with you, Richard.
I'm gonna have to try some Vogs. Richard's got me at least thinking about it. I'm at least considering the possibility.
Right?
I'm not cutting Swords to Plowshares for a Dawn Charm.
Then cut something else for it then, right? I don't know. Whatever you feel is less valuable, and try and see if it's actually a card worth including in your deck.
But why would you play Fog when you could play Settle the Wreckage? Or, you know what I mean?
Like 4 efficiency. Mana for Settle the Wreckage.
Not everyone leaves up all their mana every turn.
Krim plays Drago in every single deck, so he doesn't
Krim's always a Drago, so...
Plus, what if they're green and have like 20 basics from your Settle the Wreckage?
I mean, they're gonna ramp anyways, right? So you may as well just help them do it.
No, I need flexibility with my fogs, or I'm not gonna... I mean, I'll try running literal fog. Yeah, Dawn Charm has some flexibility.
I mean, Dawn Charm is a good one, and the
Teferi's Protection is the best one.
The free one is so underrated. Like the free green one, I think.
Oh, that one's terrible.
Yeah. The whole cycle is so good.
But Obscuring Haze is like you save 1 mana for a fog, and you might get a little bit more value if a creature's on the battlefield, and you need your commander or heal on the battlefield. Yeah.
But you can still cast it naturally too. It's not efficient if you cast it naturally.
Look, I've lost Obscuring Haze, all right, but I've lost many things, so I don't know.
I think that if you take one thing away from the podcast, it's cut several lands and replace them with fogs.
There it is.
All removal and lands.
Yeah.
Fogs and pet cards. We got it. What if Fog is my pet card? What are you going to do?
I mean, then play it.
Maybe the Fog is the backup plan we were looking for.
I'm waiting for the Secret Rendezvous plus Fog card. I'm sure Wizards is going to give me an instant speed Secret Rendezvous modal Fog. These cards are so bad. We just staple them together, and Richard will play them.
Your city is under attack. It's available online. We're gonna see it work. So that's step 1. All right, we got 8 tips out of the way that we think you should avoid doing. Wait, 8 mistakes. 8 mistakes you shouldn't be doing in Commander. I nailed it.
8 things you should be doing every game.
Look, I didn't have a coffee today. I'm running low on fumes, but we got there. That's the main thing. All right, we got there together. The journey has completed. If you got here with us, thank you so much for reaching the end of the podcast. Like and subscribe. And also, if you want to support the channel, did I do the MTG Goldfish merch thing? I don't think I did. But MTGGoldfishMerch.com, you can buy the beautiful playmat staple on Richard Wall. You can buy a new thing that we might be announcing very soon, so keep your eyes peeled on that. And deck boxes, deck sleeves, and all that good stuff. And you know the drill. And let us know what you think about these tips. If there were any other tips you would tell other people, or tell us to do. I don't know. Give us some tips for future Commander clashes. Let us know in the comments section and all that stuff. All right, that's it, everybody. Hope you enjoyed. Until next time, friends. See ya.